Okay, welcome back. If everybody can have their seat. If I haven't met you yet, I'm Matt Dorenzo, Lion's Executive Director. And we're going to kick off a series of what we call lightning talks. First up is Josh Mabry and Doreen Mendoza from Facebook. And we're pleased to have Facebook as a sponsor of the conference this year. But also, and more importantly, Facebook has really invested in people to work individually with publishers. And Lion, along with the Institute for Nonprofit News, which many of you guys are also members of, thanks to support from the Knight Foundation, has partnered up with Facebook this year. We have 3 pilot sites, or 4 Lion members actually. Homepage Media, Kelly, Maria Arcangelo from the Philadelphia Public School Notebook, Berkeley side in California, and Glenn Berkins of Q City Metro have been involved in a pilot project where they have access to Facebook staff. Facebook has access to them to get their input and feedback to help kind of figure out how small publishers can navigate this big, giant, mysterious platform, right? That everybody likes to, has opinions about, right? Okay. And so over this year, we've really gotten to know Josh and Doreen. They've been so responsive, and that's I think the first part of the battle is having someone else on the other end of the line to talk to, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate you being here, so it's over to you.
I don't know if we're supposed to sit or stand or what. One of us has to stand. So I'm Doreen. Just to give you a little background, I spent most of my career in local news at the San Diego Union Tribune, the Daily Californian. We walked in one day and were informed by the big paper in town that we no longer existed. And pretty shortly thereafter, they came in, locked the doors, and gave us our options. So I understand what it's like to work for a small publisher. I feel your pain sometimes. From there, I went on to work at the San Diego Union Tribune, a local television station, the NBC affiliate, owned and operated station in San Diego. And then I moved on from there to the North County Times, which also, unfortunately, was purchased and then shut down. And then I went to CNN to work as a social media producer. And about 2.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to come to Facebook, and what I was really excited about is that they told me I would get to work on tools that would help publishers of all sizes. And I was a journalist, I was a social media producer, and I wasn't sure I quite believed everything, but I thought it was a really good opportunity because where I was at CNN, we had about 700 local affiliates, and I could tell that they really needed help understanding the platform. I needed help understanding the platform. So I'm excited I get to do this work every day. We launched the Facebook Journalism Project in January. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and I'll let Josh introduce himself.
Thanks, Doreen, and thank you for having us. It means a lot to us. As Matt said, we're here to listen as much as we are to present. My local news story, I came up in local news. I helped start my high school's local news broadcast, which you can imagine the kinds of stories we were doing about prom and such. But it led to an internship at the local television station, which I became a photographer and then a producer, and just learned a lot along the way, which opened up a lot of opportunities and eventually grew to a role leading digital strategy for a local broadcast company, Gray Television, which has about 50 local newsrooms across the U.S. Most are medium to smaller markets, so I've had a lot of time visiting those markets and working with folks who are doing 6 different jobs to make sure the right story's told to the communities that are being served. So about a year ago, I was brought onto the Facebook team as the first person solely focused on local publishers and ways that we could grow better partnerships and learn more from local publishers so that the Facebook tools that we're building every day work better for you and the stories that you're trying to tell to the communities that you serve. So I'm excited to be here. It wasn't so long ago that either of us were publishers and kind of reaching out to Facebook for help. So we won't belabor that point, but we do think it's important that we come from local, we're passionate about it, and that's really the framework for the work that Doreen and I are doing every day.
Okay, so to get started, we're going to take on 2 different topics each. I'm going to update you a little bit about the Facebook Journalism Project, which you may or may not be familiar with. There's a short flyer inside your tote bag that broadly explains what the Facebook Journalism Project is and ways you can get involved. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our efforts around news integrity and how Facebook users are hopefully getting more informed with the tools that we're creating. And then Josh will talk about newsfeed, and he'll talk about money. The Facebook Journalism Project launched in January. It is basically 3 pillars. Collaborative development is a little bit about what we're doing with the partners that we have currently through Lion and INN and some other partners, where we listen to what you say about the products we're developing. There are lots of Facebook products. We know that we're launching all the time. It's hard to keep up, but some of the things that we have launched recently in direct response to publisher feedback are the calls to action buttons on instant articles. We launched instant articles without the calls to action. We heard from publishers that they needed direct ways to have relationships with their readers. So now we allow people to sign up for newsletters, to like your Facebook button or download your your mobile app. So that's one example. Training and tools for journalists, mostly right now, involves CrowdTangle, and Amber will be here later today to give you a run-through of CrowdTangle. CrowdTangle is free. It's both an analytics platform and a social discovery platform. It's incredibly powerful, especially for local. So if you don't have access already or you haven't requested access, definitely find one of us and let us know. And training and tools for people is mostly our work around news integrity and what we're doing to help people feel more informed about the news that they're finding and reading on Facebook. We published a blog post about our 6-month update. The stuff that you guys may have heard of or may even have attended are the Facebook Journalism Newsday events in DC. We had them all over the country. We've done some in other countries. And this is a way where publishers could come in, listen to updates from Facebook, and then get one-on-one help. We had help desks with everything from audience development and instant articles help, engineering support, to strategy sessions, and talking about everything from how do I get verified to how do I implement instant articles. And this is online. If you haven't read it yet, it's just a good summary of all the work we've been doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about training and tools for people. This is our news integrity work. So the main area that we're focused on is informed communities. We found that inauthentic content is financially motivated, and by disrupting the economic incentives, we can reduce the amount of that kind of content that appears on our platform. We're also building new products to curb the spread of false news and show fewer stories that are either misleading, sensational, or just straight up spam. And then we're helping people make more informed decisions, and we'll show you some examples of that. So the first example of how we're disrupting economic incentives is by using the algorithm to find low quality pages that don't have substantive content. So this is where you would click on a link and it would take you to a page with very little actual content, and you're subjected to a lot of ads, or you're subjected to links that ask you to click on things. It's just clearly not a news article. So people have told us that they expect when they click on a link to get the information that they were promised, and if they don't have that kind of experience, they complain about it. So we rolled out this update so that people will see fewer posts and fewer ads in their newsfeed that link to these low quality web experiences. We also have a policy in place to prevent advertisers with low quality web page experiences from advertising on our platform. And we're increasing enforcement on ads and taking into account organic posts in newsfeed that fall under this criteria. Clickbait and false news detection. So we're working on actual product updates within newsfeed. People tell us that they don't like the clickbait types of headlines that lure people in, where you get some information but not all of it, but in a very sensational way that's basically intended to lure people into clicking on a link. So in an effort to support an informed community, we're working to determine which kinds of stories fall under these clickbait guidelines, so that we can show them to people less often. We made an update to Newsfeed last year to reduce stories from sources that consistently post clickbait headlines that withhold or exaggerate information. Today we recently made 3 updates that build on this work so people will see fewer clickbait headlines in their feeds and more on the stories they find authentic. So we do see sometimes from local publishers that they worry a little bit that this might target some of your stories. So please, if you have these concerns individually, come and find us and we'll look through some of your headlines and give you some guidelines if you need it. But these are, the kinds of headlines we're talking about, the all caps, lots of exclamation marks, just intentionally meant to mislead or lure people in. We also made a change where we're not just looking at it at the page level or at the domain level, but at the post level, so that these things don't always get missed by our algorithm. And we've started testing it across the world in other languages, not just in English. In informing community on Facebook, we're giving people ways to see context around stories now before they actually click on the story. So it used to be that you click on a story and you would get a list of related articles underneath it. This new feature allows you to see related articles before you click on the story so that you can make a more informed decision. Some of these related stories will come from our third-party fact checkers who have responded to reports that a story is misleading or false or contains false information, and their feedback on whether or not that is consistent with what's been reported. It's also going to include news from publishers who are publishing about the same story, and that's all algorithmically detected. And this is available internationally also. 2 months ago, we launched a tool introducing publisher logos. This is because we found that when people were clicking into trending stories or doing searches for news content, that the logos weren't large enough. They weren't able to remember which source they were looking at and which publisher they were actually reading, and it didn't help with their recall. So now we've launched a way for publishers to go into your brand asset library, upload a variety of logos, and those will appear next to search results and next to trending news story results. And they're hoping to roll it out more broadly so that it also appears across Facebook in Newsfeed, wherever news might surface. And if you really, really want to nerd out about it, you can come and I'll show you a video of how that works, what it looks like. And finally, we launched a test to give people, the article context. This came directly from publisher feedback. Sometimes when people are reading stories, they want to know more about the publisher themselves. This might happen if you're reading a lot of international media, or you're reading in a community you're visiting and you're not really sure who the media are in a community. So you get this little eye, and that contains more information about the publisher themselves. This is pulled from a variety of sources, including your page, if you've appeared in trending stories, related articles, your Facebook page, and there's some information that can come from Wikipedia. We're working with them also to supply little snippets. And this is pretty new and it's still being developed, but this should be a way for publishers to easily be able to show who they are and what they're about for readers. And it will also notify readers if there isn't additional information about a publisher. The News Integrity Initiative, I believe Molly is here. Hi. So we launched this not very long ago. It's an international coalition of tech and media companies, and she'll be talking about this a little bit more extensively this afternoon, and how we're working together to repair trust and create quality journalism in the digital age. The stakeholders include universities, advertisers, media companies, social media companies, tech companies, all over the place. And We understand that fake news is not just a Facebook problem. It's going to take this whole community of people to solve it and figure it out. And we recognize that this is a long-term investment. Our efforts are not going to pay off today or tomorrow, but we're willing to invest both the money and the time. And now I'm going to pass it over to Josh, and then we'll take questions, I guess, when we're done. Yeah.
Thank you, Noreen. So I'm going to talk about newsfeed, and then I'm going to give you the fastest course on publisher value in Facebook imaginable, being mindful of time. But we'll follow up with Matt with links and resources to all the things we talk about, so you guys will have these on demand afterwards as well. To start, I actually want to let the person who runs our newsfeed team give you an explainer of newsfeed. He can do it much better than I can, and then we'll talk a little bit more about publisher value.
People post a lot of things on Facebook. Actually, the average person has thousands of things on any given day that they could read in their newsfeed. My name is Adam, and I look after newsfeed at Facebook. And our mission on newsfeed is to connect people with the stories that matter to them most. And to do this, we use a tool called ranking. Ranking is a set of algorithms that we use to try to assess how interested people are in each and every story that they could see on Facebook. So what is an algorithm? Simply put, it's a formula or a set of steps for solving a particular problem. It's a little abstract. So maybe a real-world example. Let's say I'm waiting for my wife Monica at a restaurant and she's running late. I have to order her something because she texts me and asks me to do so. At that moment, I have a problem to solve. I have to figure out what to order Monica for lunch. And we can actually break that problem down into steps. The first thing I would do would be to check what's on the menu, because I can't very well order something that's not available at the restaurant. Then, I consider all of the information I have available to try to make a good decision. Things like, does she tend to like fish, or does she not like burgers? Is it lunchtime or dinner time right now? What's good at this restaurant? What did she have for lunch yesterday? And then from there, I'd actually make a prediction. I'd essentially estimate the likelihood that she'd be happy with the fish or the chicken soup. And in ranking, we have names for these steps. The first we call inventory. What's on the menu? In newsfeed, the menu is the stories that you have not seen from your friends and from the publishers that you've decided to follow. The second we call signals. The information we have available to make informed decisions. Signals are things like how old a given story is, or who posted it. Even little things like how fast your internet connection is right now, or what kind of phone you're on. And we rely on signals and, in a large way, feedback from our community to understand what content might be problematic. Maybe it's violent content, or spam, or clickbait, or false news. And we use all of these signals to try to make informed predictions, which is the third step. Predictions are things like how likely are you to comment or share a given story? How likely are you to hide or report a story? And then we take those few dozen predictions and we weight them and roll them up into a relevancy score, a number that represents how interested we think you are in any given story in your inventory. And then we order stories by those scores. We do this for each and every person who uses Facebook, for every story that's in their inventory, every time they come to newsfeed. And because recency is an important signal, newsfeed is lightly chronological, but not strictly so. And we know we're not perfect and that we make mistakes, which is why we're constantly iterating and trying to get better at connecting people with the stories that matter to them most. And that, in a nutshell, is how newsfeed works.
There we go. So I think it's important to play this and start publisher value here, because as we launch the Facebook Journalism Project, you can imagine we get a lot of questions about how newsfeed works. And one of the things we're working really hard to do is talk about newsfeed and communicate how it works more and more, so that you have that resource and you understand how each individual user is being connected to the stories that you're telling, and that can help inform your storytelling process along the way. So something very important that we always like to start off with. I want to just run through, I'm not going to go into great depth on all these, but I did want to showcase, these are some of the ways that publishers drive value from Facebook and Facebook tools. You've got things like direct sold ads in instant articles, ad breaks that we're testing, things that aren't even on Facebook, like the referral traffic that comes to your website, Audience Network, which is actually an extension of the Facebook advertising products that you can utilize to generate revenue on your sites, and then Instagram, while less there is starting to grow some opportunities for publishers to drive value on that side of the platform, or on that platform as well, I should say. We won't hit all of these again, but I do want to walk through some of the big ones and some of them that we've iterated over the last 6 to 9 months in really meaningful ways based on publisher feedback as part of the Facebook Journalism Project. So just very quick poll, how many people know about instant articles? All right, pretty good, pretty good. So if you don't know what instant articles are a way for you to have your articles load instantly on Facebook if somebody's browsing in the Facebook app. A few years back, the user feedback was, you know what, one of the poor experiences that I face on your app when I'm browsing is that when I go to click a story, it takes a long time to load. So our team said we could probably help out with that. We could probably make this a better experience. And here comes along instant articles. So as the name suggests, they load instantly, 10 times faster than the mobile web. This is your story loading up right in the Facebook platform. And so over the course of the last 6 to 9 months as the Facebook Journalism Project launched, publishers told us, we want to use instant articles. Some publishers said, it's difficult for us to onboard. Others said, we just need to be able to make more revenue through instant articles. What can you do? And as we thought about all the ways that instant articles can drive value for publishers, one way being just the way users interact, we started thinking about these issues and how we could drive more monetization through the instant article interface, or the tool, I should say, excuse me. And I want to showcase some of the results there. One thing I want to note here, when we talk about 20% more clicks to instant articles, people are 70% less likely to abandon and share instant articles 30% more of the time. Instant articles aren't weighted differently in aggregate in newsfeed. As users start to click on more instant articles as individuals and associate your brand with this fast load time, we see that they start to engage with your brand more and more. And that's why you start to see these results. It's not that instant articles are favored in a different way, but on an individual basis, if I'm somebody who clicks instant articles more often than not because they load quickly for me and that's important to me as an individual user, I as an individual will start to open more instant articles. If you're a brand that uses instant articles, I may start to associate your brand with that fast load time. And that's really where you start to see these sorts of statistics pop up. So over the course of the last 6 to 9 months, again, with publisher feedback, we've worked really hard to increase the value and the monetization opportunities. As a result, we're paying out more than $1 million. I think it's closer to $2 million at this point, to be honest, to publishers via instant articles. 50% increase in RPMs that Facebook Audience Network is driving. Facebook Audience Network is, again, the advertising tools on Facebook that allow you to use Facebook inventory to generate revenue for your business. And then 20 to 50% more traffic compared to mobile web content. And in the US, this is around 20%. So again, this is that fast load experience that people are gravitating towards. So very quickly, I'll just walk through these, and again, we'll follow up so you have all these resources on demand afterwards. But when we look at monetization in instant articles, there are a number of ways that you can drive value. The first one is direct sold. You can bring your inventory that you're selling on your website into the instant article experience. You keep all the revenue, you control it, and then your users get that fast load experience that they're really asking for. The audience network, say you have your direct sold inventory and you have extra inventory, you could backfill with audience network. You could also only run audience network if you're not somebody who goes out and does direct sales as a way to generate revenue from Facebook demand. Ads and recirculation, something publishers have told us over the last several months is, that space at the bottom of instant articles could be interesting, an interesting opportunity to drive additional value. So we've started offering this recirculation unit in the sponsored articles at the bottom of instant articles, again, to drive additional revenue. And then one thing, branded content continues to grow as an opportunity for publishers, and we have made it possible for you to sell your branded content and put it in the instant articles format so that also loads quickly for the users when they're browsing. If you're interested in some case studies, one thing I'll put out a plug, we're always interested in telling your story, what's working for you. If you have a case study or a story you want to share, we're more than happy to work with you on that. We do have some case studies published on our Facebook media blog that walk you through how some publishers are using instant articles. We just published one with the Atlantic this last week. I know these are larger organizations than many of you in the room, but there are good ideas, and I think it gives you good insight into how publishers are thinking about instant articles. I think a lot of publishers tested instant articles 12 months ago or more. A lot of changes have happened over the last 6 to 9 months. So you'll see in cases like the Atlantic where they've adjusted their strategy over time based on the updates and seen really meaningful results. Another quick plug, being mindful of time, if you go to facebook.com/newsmediaupdates, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, and that's where we share these case studies on a regular basis. We also share product updates, all the things that we're putting out there to help keep you more informed about products. Doreen mentioned the call to action units. Oh, I didn't know it had this jazzy animation, pardon me. So call to actions are something that we've really worked to develop and build over the last several months. Again, directly based on publisher feedback in the Facebook Journalism Project. We know you drive a lot of value from, driving more newsletter signups that you can directly monetize and create that more direct relationship with users. So these CTAs, if you're using instant articles, these are free and they help you streamline the process to get somebody to like your page or sign up for your email newsletter or even download your app if that's something that's important to you. The Local Media Association recently did a case study and they outlined 3 or 4 publishers and the way that they're using these different calls to action. If you go to localmedia.org, that's a free download. You can dig in there, and I think you'll find some publishers that are probably doing things that either you're doing or that you would like to do and get some really interesting feedback there. I did want to briefly mention the subscriptions test within Instant Articles that we're launching. We made this announcement in the last few weeks. You can already have a paywall on Facebook and share links, and when somebody hits the paywall, they go to your paywall on your site and ultimately work to drive that conversion, that subscription for your publication. Publishers said, hey, Instant Articles are awesome, but if I can't do subscriptions within Instant Articles, it's not a tool that I'm going to be able to leverage. So our product team said, let's work on this, let's see what we might be able to do, and as a result, we are testing a flow where you will be able to use Instant Articles and also set up a paywall so that you can drive that conversion and get people to sign up and pay for your work right there on Facebook. We've published a blog, so I won't go into all the details. If you have questions at the end, happy to answer those. And then just quick reminder, as mentioned, the different tools that are available right now for monetization on Facebook. Being mindful of time, I think that's a good place to land. If there are any questions, happy to take those.
Kelly, of course.
And if you don't mind saying your name and where you're from when you ask the question, it'd be awesome.
Kelly Gilfillan, Homepage Media Group, and this is actually, I just immediately signed up for the news media updates.
Awesome.
But you have to use the email that is your Facebook account.
Oh, good tip. I didn't even know
And
that.
David Beard figured that out right now, just for me.
Kudos to David.
That's it.
That was a comment. I like that.
Hi, I'm Eli George. I'm from Southwest Florida and Fort Myers. I guess my concern is that Facebook constantly changes the game. They say, oh, don't do clickbait stuff. I don't think there's anybody in the room who purposely tries to do clickbait, but we definitely try to take advantage of the algorithm. So for example, you used to be able to say things like, click here or share this. And now if you do those things, the algorithm hurts that. So you say don't do clickbait, what does that actually mean? What can I put in a post? I'd love to use the data from Facebook and know that it's 100% accurate, but I can't tell whether the algorithm hurt my post or that my audience isn't actually interested in it.
It's a good question. So the first thing I would say, and this is one of those things, Doreen, remind me so that I don't forget, we'll include in the follow-up materials that we get to Matt. We have published a post and guidance on what is considered clickbait and what's not, and I think more importantly, how to optimize your website to make sure that you are a good actor. And I think the reality is, for most publishers in this room, if not all of you, the clickbait stuff probably isn't going to affect you. To the point about what you should post, I think it's a bit of a misconception that if you say share this, that's automatically docking you. I think ultimately what's happening though, if you're always posting something like that, repetitive, just share this every time, because that's just how you post and it used to work. I think that's probably more when you're going to run into issues and potentially be looked at as spam. But if you have, a missing child or something like this, and you just say share this, I think it's twofold. One, you probably don't have to say share this because the community is probably going to share it anyway because it's important information. But in those cases, I don't think that's something you should worry about. It's more about overusing those sorts of tactics that I think could start to look like spam and cause issues. But we'll follow up with those guidelines, which I think will be helpful.
Zach Heiser, Richland Source. You had mentioned that within the Facebook Journalism Project that fewer posts and ads will lead to lower quality web pages and landing pages. Now clearly that lower quality is spammy content and things like that. Does the algorithm detect just lower quality content on web pages, or is it lower quality design as well?
Oh, it's a great question. So there are a lot of, it's truly thousands and thousands of signals that the algorithm's looking at. But some of the things that it looks at are how long does it take somebody to open an article? Is there a high bounce? If your page takes a long time to load, that could be a signal that it's not valuable to me as a user because I didn't wait for it to load. So optimizing in that way is important. When it comes to the quality of the page itself, it's looking at things like how many ads are on the page in relation to how much content's on the page. And we have guidelines about this posted also, which I will also follow up with Matt so that you have those. So long answer short, it's a combination of factors. It's not like one thing. I don't think having which this is up to judgment, I suppose, having a poor quality design website is bad. I think it's more about the performance of that website and making sure that the ad density doesn't overwhelm the story that somebody has landed there to consume. Thanks.
Back here. Hey, Josh, thanks for coming. I'm Peter Blanchard. I'm the publisher of the Cortland Voice in Cortland, New York. And I read an article the other day about the trial Facebook is doing in a few countries to have a feed of promoted content and friends content, and then a secondary feed of non-promoted news content. And some of the publishers in those countries were reporting a loss in traffic. Facebook is a huge driver of traffic to my website, and I'm sure it is for a lot of others. So I guess I'm curious as to if that, I don't know if the trial is over with yet, but if that could happen in the future.
It's a great question. Just quick show of hands. Did anyone else read about this? Yeah, that was what I was assuming. So hopefully you also saw Adam Messeri, who you saw in the newsfeed video a few minutes ago. He actually published a post to help clarify the test and what we're actually testing there. We're always testing to figure out what's best for the user and for publishers. So in this case, the test, which is measuring what it looks like to a user if your friend content is in one place and then all the other public content is in another place, whether that's a publisher or a brand you follow, those sorts of things. Please go and read Adam's clarification because I think it will ease your mind. And it's good at explaining what the test is and how we test. Ultimately, we have no plans to roll that out globally. That's a test that we're just doing in those markets at this point. But it's a great question, and thank you for asking it here so that I could share that information.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joe Hyde with San Angelo Live in San Angelo, Texas. About a year ago, I was running Facebook Audience Network ads, and y'all kicked me out. And it was because I wasn't on a mobile app, something like that. I mean, you were kind of, I guess the group there was moving more toward putting those ads in mobile apps, not on mobile websites. So is that changing, or are you only going to run the Facebook Audience Network ads in instant articles?
That's in instant articles?
Yes.
So in instant articles, for sure you can run them. To the other part of your question, let's sync offline because I don't know the specific situation. But yeah, Audience Network is available in instant articles.
And one more question. As far as provisioning the ads inside of instant articles, are you allowing our Google DFP tags to display ads in line in the articles, or do I have to run it through the Facebook platform?
So you can, and apologies, ads aren't my forte, but you can't do like backfill from Google, but what you can do is use like DFP to put your direct sold ads in. And then you can actually have that waterfall into Audience Network as backfill from the Facebook demand. We got time for maybe a couple more?
Yeah, a couple more.
Hi, Catherine Gotthard with All Things Writing in Prince William
Sorry, I
County.
didn't see you. Where are you?
Oh, sorry.
I'm like blind. Oh, thank you for waving.
So I have a question. I've run into some kind of lower grade publications or publication wannabes. I don't know how you explain it, but they're not like legitimate. And they do things like they try to sell advertising on their website, and then they want to have a paid Facebook community. Are they allowed to do that? Can they do that? Like they basically charge you a fee to be part of their Facebook community.
Oh, interesting. So I'd have to know more about what they're doing specifically. There are interesting use cases like in groups, for example. The Boston Globe has a group that's just for subscribers. It's kind of informal, I suppose, at this point, because we don't have a formalized mechanism that makes that really streamlined. I don't know what they're trying to do, but there are use cases where we see folks having like premium content. So if you're a subscriber, in the case of the Boston Globe, you actually have access to this subscriber-only group where they do a little bit different kind of engagement and storytelling.
Yeah, that's what they're doing, is they're basically charging you to get into this group to have discussions about their articles.
Yeah, I don't know of any policy against that, but I think that's something Doreen and I should take back and talk to the team about.
One more quick question.
And it's a very quick question, I hope. I'm Ronnie Newton. I'm the editor of weha.com in West Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm just wondering, how do things get called spam, and what can you do about it? Because I actually had a story on our budget last night that I posted. The headline is, West Hartford will get $24 million in state aid from bipartisan budget deal. That doesn't sound like spam to me at all. It allowed me to post it on our site, but I tried to put a link as, no laughs from the Connecticut people here. But I tried to post it as a comment to one of our state senators, kind of post about the budget to say, here's how the town did. 3 times, and it got marked as spam, and I couldn't figure out how to post it. And there was a lot of engagement on that post, so I really wanted them to read my article.
Right.
But
So you were posting on another page?
I was posting on just somebody's post in a group.
Right.
It's somebody I interact with a lot, but it wouldn't let me post this particular article. I've been able to post other things the same way.
Yep.
And I just wondered, what do you do if something gets marked as spam? I clicked to have it removed, but it didn't do anything.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't actually think we can answer it from here because there are a lot of different factors in play, especially in a group. The admin may have actually been taking it down, like not knowing and not being able to see it in real time. I wouldn't be able to give you an answer. It doesn't sound like something that we would be doing algorithmically or anything. So we can sync on that afterwards too, and maybe you can show us the example. Cool. Thank you all so much for the time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And coming up right now, real quick, we've got Christopher Guess, who's going to talk about his Push mobile app, which he developed specifically for small news organizations.
Sure. I sent them a PowerPoint. I thought there was going to be, I can grab my laptop, but I thought there was going to be a PowerPoint. I got an email this morning asking about it. Well, I don't know. There's no power. I'm just going to grab my laptop. All right.
No, he's just grabbing his laptop real quick.
Is it are you talking about? For power. For the new guy?
Yeah.
No. He actually just
detecting it. Just there we go. That's mine. That water bottle's mine. No worries. I'll take this. It's fine.
Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good. So my name is Christopher Guess, as I was introduced as. I am the residential RJI fellow at the University of Missouri, part of their journalism school. And today I'm here to talk about a project that is for all of you. It's a little bit out of alignment with the previous presentation, but we'll get to that in a minute. So basically, my background is both in journalism and technology. I've been a developer. I've worked in many, many different places across the world. I just spent the last 2 years where I started this project as a Knight International Journalism Fellow, working with a group called the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project out of Sarajevo and Eastern Europe in general, where a lot of those organizations actually have a lot more in common with yourselves than you would actually imagine. They're really small organizations, and that's what I started the Push project to help with. So, the current state of affairs for mobile news. Okay, so at best, most of you are probably going to have a mobile optimized site, Google AMP, maybe a Facebook Instant. But you're still going to be really heavily dependent on social media. So your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Snapchats, your Instagrams. And the presentation before was very nice. However, that project that they were talking about actually hit one of my countries, Serbia, which is where this project is used the most. And there's no plans for rolling it out, but you should still have options. And even if you don't, when you post something to your site, depending on how large your audience is, everybody's not seeing it in their feed. They have to go to your page. You have to pay to click for both Twitter, Facebook, all these organizations. So even if they're not directly siloing it, they are still going to limit your reach as a way to promote you boosting your page. I'm sure we all get the notifications every day about, pages like this were boosted for some reason in mine it always shows up as yen. I've never been in Japan, but 40 yen every day. I've never been to Japan. No idea why Facebook tells me I should pay in that currency, but it happens. So another issue with small news organizations is that you often don't publish enough to retain readers day to day, right? One of the big important things, as we all know, is to get into that cycle where they wake up in the morning or they're sitting at their office in the afternoon after, they're a little tired from lunch, and you get into the habit. And if you're not publishing enough, people really want to see new content. So if you go a day or two and there's nothing new, people start to fall out of sync with you. We've all tried crowdfunding. We need to try more. But it's really hard to reach the users as well, right? So my idea, and something I think might actually work, is mobile apps. I had the Holy Grail up there for a while, and I keep saying, maybe this time, guys? Okay, now, mobile apps. You've all thought about it. You've all wondered how you could get one, but then you've all come down to the fact that they're expensive and building it is very confusing, right? So you're going to cost $30,000 to $50,000 per platform, per iOS, per Android. I know this because that's what I would charge if someone approached me to build something like this and maintain it. 6 months minimum, right? If you change your CMS, and we all change up our projects probably more often than the big guys do, you have to rewrite like half your code base, which costs more, which is less of an impediment, etc. And developers are a huge pain in the ass. We're finicky, we're difficult to manage, we don't often speak your language. It's a mess. So then you have to hire a project manager. Okay, well there's another, 40 grand, etc. So I realized this is a problem, and a friend of mine approached me one day. He runs a fairly successful investigative news organization, only about 8 employees, but they make big headlines in Belgrade quite often. And he's like, we need a mobile app. Like, we need to reach these people. Everybody wants this, but we don't have the money, obviously. We are like 8 people, and all of us are working 20-hour days already. So what can we do? I'm like, well, let's see what mobile apps normally do. Okay, so these are some older from last year, some screenshots, but basically the same these days. You have international, you have locals, and they all do the same thing. So I sat out there and I was figuring, somebody must have written something like a WordPress, right? Where you can just download some code, run it, and because it covers pretty like 90% of the use cases, it's good enough for about 90% of the people. Well, there wasn't. There was nothing out there. And I was shocked, and so I decided to build it. And it's called Push. And that logo's been subject to change for about 2 years. I'm not a graphic designer. But it looks like this. It looks like a news app, right? So this is from Azerbaijan, but it's in English. It's great. And here's what it can do for you guys. So you can do most of the stuff you'd expect. You can view your headlines. You can read your stories. You can sort your stories by categories. You can do offline caching. So if someone doesn't have great service out where they live, but they're in town for the day, they can still download all your stories and read everything and all that great news. That you can search, of course. You can share on social media, which, despite my hesitations, is still an extremely important and valuable way for you to get your news out. You can get full analytics. You can receive push notifications. This is the really cool part, because one of the things about those small organizations like yourselves that might not be publishing every day and might fall out of the news cycle for people is that if they get that little itch in their pocket, like we all do, they're going to open it, right? And so you can reach out to your readers when you want them to read stories, when you're publishing new things, when you want to solicit them to say, hey, would you like to give us $5 to keep working on the great stuff that we're doing, right? There's video integration for those of you that are doing it. It's a very nice little player. I'm very proud of it. You can run one-off little promotional campaigns. So if you are, there's a big fair that weekend or something, and you made a mobile website version for it, but you don't want to release a whole new version of the app, you can just put a little link right at the top of the app, and it will link out to it within the app. It looks really native. It's really nice. If you do publish in multiple languages, it supports multiple languages. Right now it's in like 8. Most of them probably not the ones that you're interested in, but I just revamped the entire translation system, so it's really fast and much easier to do now too. And this is something that you guys don't have to worry about quite yet, but one of the cool research things is I'm building in some like anti-censorship technology. So if they decide to crack down ever, there's some ways around it. In fact, the New York Times just today released something like that on their website, which is really cool. So this is what it consists of. There's essentially 4 parts, but there's a lot more, but this is what it looks like on the outside. So you have your CMS backend. I've been getting some questions from people lately. This does not replace your CMS. This is not a new version of WordPress. It's not anything like that. What it does is it hooks into it. So the idea is that you, as an editor or reporter, should have to do no extra work when you publish a story. If you publish a story on your CMS, it goes to the app and it looks great on the app. If you want to send a push notification, that's the only time you should ever have to interact with the software. Most of the companies I've been working with have been going for over 1.5 years, and they actually forgot that they have push notification capability, but they still have thousands of readers a day, so it's pretty great. You have the push server in the middle, which I'm going to talk about next. Then you have the Android and the iOS apps. These are all native code, no web view in app shell sort of stuff that a lot of different organizations are always talking about. This is real, it's fast, and it takes advantage of everything that the device has to offer. So in the between, you have full user management. So journalists come in, journalists go. You don't need to share passwords. You can view all your analytics. You can manage your push notifications. You can manage your categories without having to relaunch the app. So if you want to change up categories or change the order, you can do that from the back end, and it just works on their side. If you're running a server, if you have a server guy or something, there's tons of scripts to make this really stupidly easy. I got sick of managing like 8 of these deployments myself, so I wrote everything to make it stupid simple. It works with a bunch of different CMSs, and in fact, Town News, who's here today, I'm working with the Columbia Missourian to integrate it with them. So I'd love to talk to you, by the way, town news guy, later. Can deploy it on any standard cloud server. This might be a little techie for you guys, but trust me, you have somebody that knows what to do, or you can hire someone for like a couple days. And it's fully encrypted by default, so you don't have to worry about all the security stuff. So why do you use it? It's fast. It's a week. For me, it's like a couple hours, but a week tops for 6 months instead of 6 months. So you have constant updates. I'm adding new features every day, practically. I have students at Missouri working on this with me. And in fact, my old organization, they're trying to hire new people in Sarajevo to add new features as well, which will, of course, go into the full stream. It's a lot more stable than your website. It's really quick. I can show you a demo later if you want. It's completely open source. I'm not making money if you download it and use it yourself. I just do it through the gracious funding of my various funders. And the push notifications, as I mentioned before, can really incentivize your users. So it's been up and running with a number of news organizations for a long time already. All of these organizations have been in the wild for like a year and a half. And just last week, with the New Jersey News Commons at Montclair State University, we're launching it with 4 new news organizations. The Android apps are up in the store. We're having some logistical issues with Apple, not technical ones. But Joe is here to talk about that. I'm sure you can find him somewhere if you want to mention that. And the Columbia Missourian, I'm going to be working on rolling out as soon as I finish up that town news integration, which then all of you can just use because it's not going to be like a one-off just for them. And I'm adding more, of course. Hopefully you. So I'm working on some new things. So people like to see the comments via Facebook because they don't want to manage their own comments. That makes sense. I want to add ads network support. However, everybody does it a little differently, so I'd love to hear what you guys actually use. I don't know, but tell me. Integrate donation support or better donation integration support. I want to add more CMSs. I want to make the WordPress stuff really sing. It's cool right now, but I want to make it real pretty. And the setup should be easier. I want to make it push button eventually. Don't worry about that unless you're a developer. And if you have more features, let me know. Mess around with it. I can give you some links to download the apps and you can check it out. If you're a tech guy, it's all native, as I mentioned. It's all Dockerized, so you can run that. I'm not going to get into all this, but I'll put it up there for those of you that are interested. And there's the GitHub as well. So that's my contact info. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always excited to work with you guys. I built this for people like yourselves. So I really want to hear what you have to say, and I would love it if you would be interested in using it.
We've got time for a few quick questions. I've got one, actually.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to integrate with a new CMS, like I use Expression Engine, and how much of a leap is it to add something on to? What sort of information do you need to pull from?
Mm-hmm. So basically, that is a question that varies wildly. There was, for something like WordPress that didn't provide its own REST API, if you know what a REST API is, by default, I had to build a plugin so that it could provide one. If you already provide one through your CMS, then it's like a couple hours worth of like tinkering around just to make sure that the data comes in
Excellent.
correctly. Yeah. Any other questions?
Let me get the mic.
No, I don't. So that's a question I get a lot, and there's a very good reason I don't support RSS. Basically, everything breaks if you use RSS. So the search functionality doesn't work. The push notification wouldn't work because you have to be able to send out push notifications for articles that might not be in that feed anymore. And if you can't get that data, then you can't even show the article. RSS is a very limited technology that was designed, quite a long time ago and doesn't really fit, unfortunately.
When you update the app code,
yeah,
how do the news organizations that have the app then update their app?
Sure. So on the back end, there's literally you type in /maintenance-scripts/ upgrade.sh and press enter, and it does it automatically.
You can copy
I had
and
to
paste
remember that
from
off the top of
somewhere.
my head. And on the app side, it's you run git. So I want to actually script that out too, but it's like 4 commands. It takes like 10 minutes, and the scripts will even upload it to the App Store for you as an update.
So I don't have to pay a geek $250 an hour for X number of hours per
maybe
upgrade?
1 hour, maybe 1 hour.
Okay.
But you shouldn't be paying him $250 an hour. He's ripping you off.
DC, man, it's expensive.
Maybe half that.
Thank you very much. Hey, Connie, can we get the splash back up on the... Thank you. So we're running a little bit behind because that conversation, especially with Facebook, got a little bit interesting. But we want to run down just a few highlights of what's going on with Lion. Later on, we're going to have our annual meeting, and we want to have you guys come and really dig into asking some questions about what we've been up to. And we always want to hear from members about what we should be doing more differently. We want that kind of feedback. That's why we have the in-person annual meeting with the members every year. But real quick, this has been an amazing year for Lion as an organization. We've had some serious investment from foundations that have allowed us to do so much more. Last winter, right on the heels of our conference last year, we had a $200,000 grant from the Knight Foundation for 2 years, and that's what allowed us to hire Matt and start doing so much more work. We had we had a nice investment from the Ford Foundation, which is what allowed us to bring 40-something people, to help out 40-something people to come to this conference. And also we were able to bring some people to the mini conference that we had in Phoenix. And it's made it a lot easier to bring people together in a physical space to help increase the trust and the relationships that we're building amongst each other. And we're announcing today another really amazing investment from the Democracy Fund, a $250,000 18-month grant that will help fund mentorship and training for a pilot group of publishers. We want to really take what we've been doing on an informal basis and make it much more structured, be able to pull out more information, and develop a continuing program, we hope, based off of this initial investment, that we can really help directly mentor individual publishers from people who have had experience. And this is basically looking for financial sustainability, the thing we all want so that we can go do more great journalism. So it will be about extending your revenue possibilities, tackling a new project. It's going to be a very small group of people at first, but that's something we really want to be able to grow. And we're going to have Matt talk real quick a little bit about some other highlights that we've had this year.
Yeah, so we have many new faces here, and that's kind of a reflection of the growth not only of Lion, but the growth of local indie online news sites. We hear from people every week, I think, about people who have just launched or are starting up or are thinking about it. And one thing that this Democracy Fund grant is going to help us do is, to be a little bit more specific, we're going to be working with 10 sites over the course of the next 18 months to help them build a local advertising revenue program from the ground up. And so it's eligible for people. We want a wide variety of models and people in it, for-profit and non-profit, eligible for it. The idea is, even if you are selling local advertising, maybe you didn't start with a great business plan or well-defined, or is anybody in the room maybe a long-time journalist who has that down, but maybe doesn't, the revenue side that's why we're here, right? And so that's the idea behind the program. So we're excited about that. And it helps meet a need where, in the big picture sense, what's going to go back and fix this problem of local journalism disappearing across the country and cuts being made. We don't think big newspaper chains are going to go back and restore those cuts anytime soon or ever. And so it's going to be, what's going to happen is individual communities are going to solve that problem themselves, and grassroots solutions like what you guys are doing are going to spring up. And Knight Foundation and Democracy Fund and others here, other funders in this room, are recognizing the fact that we need to build capacity at that local level and that community level and how essential that is to democracy. All right, so that wasn't very specific about Lion. So since last year, we had 130, 140 members last year at this time, and we're at over 180 now. We're in 41 states. So if you know anybody in Nebraska and places like that, we'll get to all 50, I think, pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got a couple of big square states left to fill
Right.
in on that map. So if you guys know somebody there, I mean, that's just,
Right?
we need to get those filled in. They
And if you
take up a
haven't
lot of
taken,
space.
if you haven't taken a push pin and put it in the map, please do that. That big map, that's what that's for back there, to show where we are. Because I think they're at the front desk. Yeah, yeah. And so we have almost 40 states represented here in this conference. So, which is fascinating.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of talk. You hear a lot of talk in other conferences and stuff like that about how journalism is, or the buzz about the journalism industry is always focused on the coasts, right? But we have the entire country represented here, really. So we've grown by that much. We've been trying to offer more programming in terms of the regular webinars, our newsletter, our social media presence. We're going to do more stuff like the conference in Phoenix, where we're going to be moving around the country a little bit. Hopefully, we're trying to plan something in New England, for example, next year. And what the Democracy Fund thing is going to allow us to do, and the fact that we have a full-time staff person allows us to do, is just to be able to formalize some of the great peer-to-peer support that we've had in the past. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is taking calls from you if, like, you're trying to launch a newsletter, and you want to just be connected with someone who's doing a really good job at that, or want to be connected with like documentation or resources. That's my job, to help you connect to that. So please contact me for that stuff. We have more capacity to help people before they even become Lion members. Sometimes when they need it the most, right? When they just have the idea. And there's some of you in this room in that situation. I'm trying to think of what other. Oh, the other thing is we have probably coming out in January. We're working on. There's so much information, so much good information. Like even shared this morning, there's so much good information and ideas out there, and best practices that are like in a million places. And I know a bunch of people have done work or are in the process of doing work. Like American Press Institute just launched that great site. If you guys haven't checked that out, someone tell me the URL. Betternews.org. So write that down, betternews.org, a great guide to a bunch of different best practices. We're going to be coming out with something probably in January for the people who are at that idea stage, like where do I even begin? And should I do nonprofit? Should I do for-profit? It's kind of like, it'll be like conference, Lion Summit in a box kind of thing for that. So.
And we spend so much time at this, and appropriately, talking about revenue, talking about management issues, talking about how to be better business people and get more money. What are we trying to get more money for? To do more kick-ass journalism and to run down a little bit of the amazing work that we keep seeing Lion members doing. Steve Beatty was poking around the interwebs and looking at some Lion sites and found some great stories.
Yeah, before I get going on this, which was fascinating and I thank everyone for sending me their top stories. No, there's nothing. It's just my notes. I do want to again say what Matt and Dylan were just talking about. That's a $250,000 grant to Lion, and there was like quietness in here. So I want to thank the Democracy Fund. Because we frequently see in the Lion's Den, where's this nonprofit money coming to me? Why aren't the foundations helping my for-profit organization? Am I on? People frequently want to know where the foundation money is to come to help support the for-profit organizations. Because of various tax laws, they can't make direct grants to your shop, but they can make direct grants to a nonprofit like Lion. And like Matt said, use him. That's what he's being paid for. This is the nonprofit foundation money coming to your foundation shops. So please recognize that. It's been a lot of discussions, and there's other foundations that are now interested in this. It's the kind of thing that starts to build momentum, and we're fortunate to have that. So now on to the good stuff. Not to forget that we're doing great journalism as we do all this. So I'm going to run down these very quickly. We've got Denise in Racine leading the way on the national story of Foxconn coming to Paul Ryan's district. And what's nice about this too, their nearby colleague west of the I in Kenosha made sure I knew about her story. So it wasn't, that's the best thing about Lion. We're all making sure we pay attention to somebody else's stuff. Richland Source in Ohio, which has 5 or 6 people here, they worked within the Solutions Journalism Framework to fight infant mortality, and they've caused a movement in their community where they are explaining and implementing a custom from Finland of baby boxes within the first month that helps fight sudden infant death syndrome. And it's making a huge difference in their community. WeHa in West Hartford, it's doing what local publications do by telling the story of 2 Connecticut women who survived the Las Vegas shooting and making national news local and relevant. I loved getting something from the Chester Telegraph in Vermont. There's a 24-turbine wind farm that's caused a huge rift in the community, and I got sent a note that said, there's just too many to list, but here's a link to the whole list, and there was this many stories. Again, that's what we do. We do a story, and we stay with it until it's covered. We don't just drop in once and then move along. Joe in San Angelo, Texas. I have to say, everything's bigger in Texas. He sent me everything in like 30-point headline font, which got my attention. He's got a great one where the local trash hauling service said they provided refunds to all the customers. The city didn't really believe them and asked for proof. And Joe wrote, Republic responded nuts and hid behind the ongoing litigation. So again, kind of holding your government officials accountable. Dylan in Tucson, the day before a U.S. House committee was set to consider a bill that would have exempted the Customs and Border Patrol from Freedom of Information requests, he wrote an editorial questioning the wisdom of letting such an agency go dark. The next day, the South Arizona congresswoman who co-sponsored the bill removed that provision. Only the Dallas Morning News was the other publication to even mention that, and that was in a brief. So Dylan has changed policy. Iowa Watch, Lyle, they have a story about an oncoming Alzheimer's tsunami and how the state is ill-prepared for it. And what I thought was great was about the 4th paragraph, there was a drop-down that said, and in blank, you chose your state, and it estimated how many people by this year were going to be suffering from Alzheimer's. So it was a way to take a local story, but if anybody stumbled across it, they could personalize and localize it for themselves. I thought that was great. The Valley Independent Sentinel in the Naugatuck Valley of Connecticut, where I had my first reporting job in 1988. They had a former city attorney who was running for alderman. He was in a car crash. He smelled like booze. He was slurring his speech, and according to the police report, got out of the car and said, I'm fucked. But it turns out he wasn't. He got a minor traffic ticket. When the reporters, though, heard about this and started asking questions, the police decided to take another look. He ended up being arrested for DUI, and he dropped out of the race. And that's only because somebody decided to ask some questions. Bob at This Is Reno in Nevada, he sent me 21 stories to look at. They're all good, I'm sure. But, you know, take a look at Bob's site. It is really good. Rob at Madison 365, they broke a story about Scott Walker, again, considering private prisons in Wisconsin. Something that no other publication had revealed. I hope you saw this on the Den as it was happening. Tom at Levittown Now in Pennsylvania, they had a hell of a story where 4 young men went missing. The staff worked 12 to 16-hour days. The 4 young men were later found murdered. As he pointed out, they scooped the New York Times by 9 minutes and most other publications by hours. And this was just an example of knowing your community and having those sources and being able to provide the coverage that nobody else can. Right here in Chicago, Susan Richardson runs the Chicago Reporter. They had a tremendous database on police misconduct that I highly recommend going to take a look at. And then they had an individual story about students of color taking the biggest hit in the Illinois higher ed budget cuts. Again, focusing on your particular audience and making sure they're best served. And the VT Digger in Vermont, covering the Capitol, they had a 5-part series documenting the toxic legacy of a now-closed Teflon plant. It was produced in partnership with the Bennington Banner, the newspaper that covers the region where the story takes place. And again, the commitment of resources to do a 5-part series for one of our shops is just extraordinary. And I'll wrap up with a small point of personal privilege. The Lens, which I ran for 8 years, has a series of stories this year about how the Orleans Parish District Attorney is issuing fake subpoenas to material witnesses to get them to come in to testify when they're reluctant to do so. And as soon as we found out about this and wrote stories, he immediately stopped doing it. We found out it was happening in the next jurisdiction over and the next jurisdiction over from that, and they've all immediately stopped coercing witnesses to come in to talk. So. There are more, and I would love to stand up here and talk for a long time, but I was limited to 3.5 minutes, which I just destroyed. So.
Thank you. I am introducing one of our sponsors, Walsh Creative. I have been working with David really just this year, but I just wanted to start. So Christopher Guest said that developers are a pain in the ass. This one is not, and I highly recommend him. David has been in business for 7 years. He's been working with publishers for 2 years. He manages 75 publisher sites. So he really understands what we go through, what we need. I love how when he sees something working great for somebody else, he says, and I have a problem, he'll say, well, somebody else had that problem and this is what we did, and I love that. Their team is very, very responsive. It is amazing to send an email saying, I need to set up my holiday guide. Oh my God, I forgot all about it. And it starts next Wednesday. And the next day it was done. I mean, that's not normal. It's normal at Walsh Creative. So David has a few minutes to talk to you guys and let you know what he does.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Does this work? Can you hear me? So thanks, Kelly. I feel like I don't have to talk anymore. She said a lot for me. So yeah, we're a WordPress development shop. We traditionally started a couple years ago before we were working with publishers, and that's specifically what we did was just WordPress development. From working with publishers and managing so many sites, we've now branched out into managing and monetizing the email newsletters, which I'll talk about later today. We also work with all the major ad server platforms. We always recommend Broad Street Ads. Kenny's here, so we work closely with all of his clients, providing support. And we try to help our clients come up with new revenue channels and new ways to make money. It's one thing to have a website that works, and we're really good at troubleshooting it and fixing problems and doing it quickly. But we like to get in the weeds with our publishers and find out ways to come up with new creative ideas on how to generate new revenue channels. You can go to our website is walshcreative.com. We're actually going to be changing our company name soon to Web Publisher Pro, so you'll start seeing that. We've productized our tiers because we work with publishers of all sizes. Some are very small one-man shops, and we're able to come up with a budget that works so that we could help them. And then we also work with large organizations that have 20, 30 plus people on staff. So we're creating different tiered packages that will allow publishers with either larger budgets or more restrictive budgets to still have access to the services that we can offer to help. So I'll be around. Tomorrow, I think Kenny and I are going to be serving mimosas for brunch at our table. So come get a mimosa and come talk to us. And I'm here all weekend, so I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, David. We are going to take a quick coffee break. We ran a little bit long on these sessions, but it's always good to have a good conversation about things. So we're going to take a 10-minute coffee break, no more than 10 minutes. Be back in here for a discussion about foundation support for local journalism. And we're going to hear from some representatives of various foundations about how they see them playing into